Okay, so Southern Cross. Now the problem I have with it, that I had with it at the beginning was I couldn't figure out if the epigraph referred to all three poems or just the first poem.
Well, let me ask for if you could.
All right, so let me. Okay, so the problem I have is does this epigraph here refer to all three songs or just this song? And if you look at the way the epigraph is situated in the three other books I have,
Yes.
it looks like it refers to all three songs.
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And I would like to get where the poem was originally published.
Mm-hmm.
You might be able to get some evidence there, but I don't know if that's going to help us. But it does look like, because the third poem,
Yes,
where Mary is in a tower,
yes,
and Hero is in a tower,
sure,
it kind of indicates that it does refer to all three.
I think it does, in that it appears beneath the overall heading three songs, and then Southern Cross and the other two poems follow. So I would be inclined to say it's for all three.
Yeah, and plus, like, the epigraph usually appears below the title,
Right.
so if it was just Southern Cross, it would come down here below. Okay.
Now I'm unacquainted with that with the epigraph, so let's read that out loud and then just tell me what it means.
Yeah. So the one sestos,
Okay.
The other abitos height, and height means named.
Okay.
That just Sestos is the city where Leander would swim from, and then he would meet Hero in Abydos.
Oh, I see. Well, this so the one Sestos, the other Abydos night. So we're looking at two
height.
I'm sorry, height. But we're looking at two entities. One is Sestos, one is the Abydos night. Height. Sorry, Abydos height, of course. All right, let's get started. So the Southern Cross.
Okay,
and let's just tell the reader the titles of all three poems. Southern Cross.
National Heritage. Oh, National Winter Garden.
Sure.
And then Virginia.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, so another thing is I was wondering, another thing that really confused me was I really thought that this was a retelling of the Hero and Leander myth, but it's really plays just like a really small part.
Sure.
Kind of like when you read Ulysses, there is just like a sliver of resemblance between the original Homeric tale.
Right. Okay.
Like, for example, in the Hades chapter of let's go with the Circe chapter. So in the Circe chapter, when Bloom wakes up in the morning and he's with Molly.
Yes.
So the only really difference that chapter has with the Circe episode is that Bloom is in the same place as Circe or something.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very small. So in this, it's hard to figure out how much Crane is trying to remain faithful to the original Latin or Greek myth.
Okay.
And I'm leaning more towards now, like hardly at all.
Yeah, I think it may be a useful reference, but I don't think it's dominating the entire all three poems.
Now, the one thing that you could think about is like the one thing I thought that comes to mind is this. So this belongs to the cycle of the bridge.
Yes.
So I'm thinking, okay, there was no bridge connecting Hero and Leander, and Leander drowns.
Sure.
Which is Crane saying, because there weren't bridges back then, you get these sort of drownings and deaths. But I'm starting to think now that no, Crane's not thinking that at all. He's not. Okay. Another thing is, I was thinking, okay, is Crane saying that Abydos, which is where Hero is,
right?
Is he saying that the lighthouse now is like a cross?
Sure.
And Abydos is south of Sestos.
Right.
But now I'm thinking that no, it's not that the Southern Cross is the tower where it's the lighthouse tower.
Sure.
It's not that.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I'll finish.
And then also, another thing that confuses me is the protagonist in this poem, he is clearly sailing on a boat. Because there's a wake. There's a wake and all that.
Sure.
But the original Leander, he didn't have a boat. He just swam across the Bosporus.
Right.
So that was another thing that tripped me up. And then we also have to ask ourselves, well, this belongs to the bridge cycle, so why is this in the bridge cycle?
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, in his long letter to Otto Kahn, where he basically tells us what he's trying to do with the bridge, he doesn't talk about these poems.
Sure.
So we really don't have good clues as to what he was. But I'm starting to think that, look, he just kind of thought that he's trying to lay out a portrait of American consciousness, and love as part of that consciousness. So let's put these in here. That's the only justification I see.
Well, having not read all that much of the bridge, I can't pass comment on that. I will say the one Sestos, the other Abydos. I think the key in this is distinction between two or more entities, which is what's developed in this triad of poems. Mm-hmm. So, all right. So, shall we?
Yeah. Okay. So let's see here.
So, how about?
Oh, and also,
sure.
I thought, well, maybe Crane has his own special views about the word Southern.
Okay.
But he doesn't, because if you look at, he only uses the word South or Southern 5 times.
Sure.
Twice it's a place name. So in Porphyro and Akron, South Main Street.
Okay.
A shift of rubber workers presses down South Main.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then in Cuddy Sark, he says, I met a man in South Street. Okay. So there's 2 of the instances. And then in the dance, he just says west, west, and south.
Right.
So...
Well, that's just in the direction that the winds are moving rather than something geographical.
Yeah. And then in the river, he uses the word south, but it's past the Valley Sleeper south or west. So south is not distinguished from west.
Here's my thinking. I think he wants to use the image of the cross in the night sky, and that necessitates using the Southern Cross, hence the reference to the south.
Well, it's the constellation, the Southern Cross.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's important that it's in the south. I think it's a consequence of wanting to refer to that a cruciform constellation. Okay, so let's see. How about we read through Vaporous Scars?
Yeah, okay. So, I wanted you, nameless woman of the south, no wraith but utterly, as still more alone. The Southern Cross takes night and lifts her girdles from her one by one, high, cool, wide from the slowly smoldering fire of lower heavens. Mm-hmm. Vaporous Scars, Eve, Magdalene, or Mary, you.
Okay.
All right.
So what I like, the nameless woman of the South, so he doesn't know what form or temperament or relation he's going to have. Mm-hmm. It could be Eve, which would be a really seductive, like temptress kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Magdalene, the reformed whore.
Yeah. Or
Mary, the mother. So these are all different modes or relationships that he could have with this nameless woman. Agreed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So nameless woman of the South, no wraith but utterly, and this is interesting. He wants to possess her not as an idea or as a notion. He wants to possess her utterly, and that determines the relationship. It could be a fleshy, sexual, carnal relationship, mm-hmm. or it could be the relationship with a mother. We're dealing with relationships that tie into the body itself. Hence, Eve, the temptress, Magdalene, the reformed whore, and there's actually some debate as to whether Mary Magdalene was actually a whore.
Yeah, but Crane
precisely.
Yeah.
And then Mary as in Mother Mary. So it's like, what relationship is this? What relationship will we ultimately have with this nameless woman of the South?
Yes.
Right.
Okay, so Southern Cross takes night and lifts her girdles from her one by one.
Right. And can we agree that her refers to night?
Well,
takes night and lifts night's girdles one by one. It's the end of the night, and it lifts those from the slowly smoldering the fire of the lower heavens. So we're dealing with dawn.
Well, Kramer interprets this as the stars slowly appear above the horizon.
That's what I'm saying. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So as the star appears, it lifts a
night,
girdle.
Right. Night, and then slowly smoldering fire will be dawn. The dawn sky.
Well, wouldn't that be the evening sky because the stars?
No. It's lifting girdles, the girdles of night from the horizon.
Okay.
So I disagree that it's revealing the stars. It's just it's the transition away from night into the dawn, if you will, because they're being lifted from the slowly smoldering fire. Were you saying that the slowly smoldering fire was the stars?
Well, I didn't.
What he says.
No, he doesn't comment.
Okay.
But I agree with you that the smoldering fire is like the horizon.
Right. So this is basically describing the dawn.
Okay. So pause. And then then the vaporous scars. You want to go for it, or you want me to tell you how Kramer interprets it?
Vaporous scars. Boobily-boo. Is vaporous scars referring to the lower heavens? Or is it just referring to stars, or what is it?
Kramer thinks it refers to, and I think he's right, the Milky Way, the arms of the Milky Way.
I see what you vaporous scars.
Yeah.
Nebula. That could be the case, or it could be the dawn sky against clouds or something. Yeah.
Because I've actually seen the Milky Way. It's kind of hard in the year 2022. But when I saw it, it does look like a scar across the sky.
Sure. Okay, cool, great.
Okay, so Eve, Magdalene, or Mary. He doesn't know what to call her because she's nameless.
Precisely.
Okay. All right, so let's skip down the next stanza.
Okay.
Whatever call falls vainly on the wave, O Simeon Venus, homeless Eve, unwedded, stumbling, gardenless to grieve, windswept guitars on lonely decks forever, finally to answer all within one grave. Okay, so the wave part, that kind of got me stuck on the hero and Leander myth.
Okay.
But he's in a boat, as we'll see later on in the poem, because there's a wake.
So the waves are just completely unresponsive to what his address to this southern woman, of course. Simeon Venus, obviously a human embodiment of the goddess.
Yeah.
Homeless Eve, this would be after casting out from the Garden of Eden, so she is now known forever as the temptress.
Yes.
And temptresses, they have sexual carnal relations outside of wedlock, hence unwedded. Stumbling gardenless, well, she's stumbling outside of the Garden of Eden. She's been expelled. Yeah. And then the windswept guitars on lonely decks, it just makes me think of musicians on like the deck of a ship. Okay,
and also Kramer thinks it's a reference to a painting by Picasso. So let me get you the painting. Hold on.
Blue?
Okay. And also windswept, Kramer thinks that, and I think he's right, that the lyre, the Greek lyre, it could be played by the wind. So if the wind
of course,
flowed through its strings, it would make sound.
Of course.
So Eve, she's on a deck. I think the man with the blue guitar in that painting by Picasso, I think he might be on a deck.
I never could tell.
More like a beach, a ground. Like there's the ocean in the background.
When was that painted?
1905, maybe.
Okay.
All right. And then finally, to answer all within one grave.
Yeah.
Do you want to guess, or should I just tell you what Kramer thinks it is?
So he's calling out to this goddess, and I guess what it means is he's never really going to know entirely. He's going to, I guess it's saying that she's unapproachable. He can't really have an answer to his question. And ultimately, that would be my. I guess I'm saying the question cannot be answered.
Well, Kramer looks at Genesis 3:19-20.
Okay.
Where it says Adam names his wife Eve because she is the mother of all living, And immediately after, God has told the couple that their disobedience has rendered them mortal.
Yes.
Along, therefore, with all of their progeny.
Mm-hmm.
So Eve has to tell all of her progeny, you're going to die.
Honestly, I think I like to go with the simplest and direct explanation, and mine is he's making this call, are you Eve, Magdalene, and Mary, but it's ultimately unknowable. It's going to be unanswered, because that's what's falling vainly on the wave. And that's what gets answered all within one grave, I guess, which is my interpretation.
Also, I want to share with you some of Kramer's interpretations, which I didn't agree with.
Okay.
So, Crane read the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock 25 times.
Yeah.
He really liked Eliot. And Eliot and Whitman are the main interlocutors. Those are the two main poets whose work he's building on.
Of course.
So he is going to make references to Eliot, but I kind of think some of these references to Eliot are very loose, very suspect. All right, go ahead.
So we're talking about these interpretations. He says the simian Venus is a Darwinian throwback to primitive animality and a reminder that apes were traditionally associated with unbridled desire. But if he's desirous of this woman, why on earth would he call her simian? It just seems strange.
But he's viewing her as a temptress because he's calling her Eve.
No, I realize that, but simian refers specifically to the ape, and it just doesn't seem reasonable that he would call this desire, the woman he desires, an ape. I get the impression that simian, which can incorporate human beings as well, it just means the human embodiment of desire, of this goddess, if it will. I don't think it has to harken back to primitive animality per se. I think that's just a bit of a stretch, to be honest.
Well, I think what we're disagreeing on is degree. Mm-hmm. So, how negatively connotated is the word simian?
Correct.
And Kramer is saying very negative. You're just saying mildly negative.
No, what I'm saying is I'm disagreeing with the ape reference. I don't think he's going to call this Venus, who he desires, an ape. I think simian strictly means a mortal physical embodiment of the goddess versus some reference to like an ape per se. I don't think that he would call this woman or this beautiful entity an ape.
Okay.
I guess that's my issue.
All right. So let's move on.
Okay.
In this long wake of phosphor, iridescent furrow of all our travel, trail derision, eyes crumble at its kiss, its long-drawn spell incites a yell. Slid on that backward vision, the mind is churned to spittle, whispering hell. Now I do, let me just, another Kramer reference, he interprets the mind as churned to spittle, whispering hell as referring to Milton.
Oh, good grief.
The mind can make of its, all right, this is hell, nor am I out. No, hold on. The mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell.
Or hell of heaven. Right.
I don't think that refers to...
Well, let's go back to the poem real fast. I think it's... I question a lot of these academic literary references he's making. The mind is churned to spittle. That describes the wake of a boat. The churning water, the white water that looks like spittle, that kind of thing. I think it's just reference to that. And if you're focusing, that backward vision is, of course, looking out upon the wake left by the boat.
Yeah.
And if you're focusing on that, it's the mind, like the water, gets churned to spittle. I don't think it's a Miltonic reference at all.
Yeah. Okay, I agree.
Whispering hell. Now we've talked about suicidality. Whispering hell, maybe it's just a temptation to dive into the water. I don't know, but I think the Miltonic reference is just a stretch to be frank.
Okay, so long wake of phosphor. Kramer interprets that, and I agree with him, as he's sailing in his boat, and the wake. They used to think that the wake there was phosphor in the wake. We now know that it's like microbiology
or algae or something, and it causes that illumination. Yeah, absolutely, I agree.
All right, so that's what the phosphor refers to.
Yeah. And I think it also kind of joins to the image of the Milky Way you were referencing too.
That could be. That could be.
I don't know if it's a significant connection, but I just wanted to invoke the other, basically.
Okay, so furrow is...
yes, the trough, if you will, of the wake, right.
Yeah. And now, why is he saying trail derision? I think he's... It's difficult to figure out what time this poem is taking place. Like, is he going towards the nameless woman or
right.
Eve, or has he already met Eve?
Sure.
So, like, has he already been seduced by this Eve? It's a bit hard for me to figure out the time. So,
right.
But he's experiencing derision now, and I think because he's let's
if I may, it says furrow of all our travel.
Mm-hmm.
If you can go back to the reference to the falls vainly on the wave, trails derision. It's almost like a commentary on there's no regard when it comes to whatever the ocean symbolizes. There's no regard for our questions. So it falls vainly on the wave, trail derision. Do you see what I'm going with this?
No.
When it says trail derision, it's almost like the water is unresponsive to our questions, our cares, our concerns. And when it says trail derision, that's basically another comment on, there's the ocean holds us valueless. It mocks us, if you will, which is my interpretation.
All right. So you're saying it's the ocean that mocks us.
Right. Well, it's saying that our questions fall vainly on the water. So it's like whatever the water symbolizes, it's mocking our questions, our intent, that kind of thing.
I didn't think of that. But that's an idea, so let me write that down.
Sure.
Okay. Eyes crumble at its kiss.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of think that means what happens when the protagonist he's thinking about his kisses to the protagonist in the past are crumbling in his mind.
Well, I think eyes crumble to its kiss is related to the mind turned to spittle. It's just the effect of looking at the wake on the senses. I mean, we can't really identify a specific form or contour, so it's more appropriate when visions crumble when looking upon this wake, just like the mind is turned to spittle on this wake.
But we got to start bringing in the antagonists of the poem. I mean,
but what's your the antagonism at this point is simply the water.
I think it's Eve.
No, I would. Oh, you're saying so eyes crumble at the Eve's kiss?
Yeah.
But why doesn't it say she? Why doesn't it say she? Versus, sweetheart. There you go, honey. Come on, sit with Mr. Will. All right. For all our travel, trail derision, and then we agree that slide on that backward vision is the wake. So what you're saying is it's like sandwiching a reference to Eve in this description of the wake.
Well, it could be that he's on a boat sailing away. He's just had a tryst with Eve, but that doesn't make much sense because
it says I wanted. Yeah, I don't think so. I honestly think that this stanza itself just deals with the symbolism of the wake and the effect of the wake when you look at it, when you listen to it. Eyes crumble at the kiss of the wake, so I behold the wake, and I cannot discern any form. No, it says eyes. I think more appropriate would be what the eye sees crumbles, the vision crumbles, if you will. Yeah, that's where I'm going with this.
But the kiss, you typically kiss the seductress or the antagonist here.
I think kiss just refers to contact, very close. I think it just means contact, to be honest.
Well, let's. Well, when we get to the end of the poem, we'll try to figure out like what time this takes place or what's happened. Okay.
Sure.
I wanted you, the embers of the cross, climbed by a slant and huddling aromatically. It is blood to remember. It is fire to stammer back. It is God, your namelessness, and the wash. Okay, so you're never going to get the reference to embers of the cross, so I might as well just tell you. Kramer points out that there's a nebula near the Southern Cross called the Coal Slant, or the Coal Sack. Yeah. So it follows the Southern Cross.
I don't think that necessarily need to be the case. If it's dawn, then the constellation is the brightness of the constellation is going to diminish to embers. Hence, the remnants of the visual remnants of the cross diminishing as dawn rises.
But it climbs by. It climbs. It follows the cross.
Well, are the embers climbing, or is the cross climbing?
No, the embers of the cross are climbing by a slant, and they're huddling near the cross.
The embers of the cross. No, I think it may be just the cross itself and the constellation diminishing with the approaching dawn. Honestly,
no. It's the nebula next to the cross,
right?
And it follows the cross as it rises in the sky.
But I don't think the scientific reference is even necessary. I mean, even without the nebula, I think it makes cross the embers, the diminishing light stars of the cross. I just don't think it's necessary, to be honest.
No, because
I like huddling. Well, actually, it does say huddling aromatically, which I guess would make more sense with a nebula than a cross does. I don't know. I'm still inclined to say it's not that reference is not necessary.
But your reference makes less sense. Mm-hmm. Your interpretation makes less sense.
I don't think so.
Because you can't interpret a huddling. You can't interpret climbed. You can't interpret.
Look. Part. I don't mean to be pedantic, but as the Earth turns, you're going to see a transition in these constellations. Hence the climbing.
But it's climbing by.
Sure.
By means next to here. You got this adverb, a slant.
A slant, though, could refer to some sort of path itself. Mm-hmm. I don't know. We'll agree to disagree, but I don't think the nebula reference is necessary for it in the least.
Well, it makes more sense. Because you can't huddle yourself. In your interpretation, it's huddling itself. The cross is huddling itself.
The embers, the burning of the stars of the cross, mm-hmm. are reduced to embers by the approaching dawn, and those embers, that flickering, that's what's huddling.
Nah.
Yeah. We'll wrestle for it.
All right, let's continue.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, it is blood to remember, just fire to stammer back. Now, Kramer interprets this as, this is my blood, and then fire is the speaking in tongues.
Maybe. I do want to say the blood to... what's being remembered?
Hold on, let me get the exact biblical verse is tongues like as of fire.
Yeah, it refers to the Pentecost.
Yeah, sure. Which is descend on the apostles of Christ.
And so he's coming to this imagery because we're dealing with a cross, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, but what is being remembered? I would say, what do you think is being remembered?
Well, I interpreted this as, I take communion as I remember you.
Okay.
The divine would descend upon me, and I interpret this as subjunctive. The divine would descend upon me, and I would speak in tongues if I were to go back to you.
Again, I think it could be far simplified. I think blood to remember, fire to stammer back, the recollections of his desires for her, flood him with passion. Mm-hmm. Hence the blood and the fire. I don't think the Pentecostal reference is necessary for this either.
Yeah, you could be right, because that is a bit of a stretch. Although we do have cross and God in this stanza. Yeah,
which I realize. But again, I think just the stretch toward the Pentecostal Christian imagery is a bit... It's a stretch, like I said. I think quite simply he's remembering her, the passion he felt for her, and it stirs passion.
Really. All right. Well, let me write this down.
Sure.
Okay, and then your namelessness... Kramer sees that as a reference to negative theology.
That's my thinking as well.
Yeah.
Namelessness. The fact that a person cannot be, that this entity, God, or this southern woman, she can't be named, she can't be categorized, and the fact that he's asking, "Are you Eve, Magdalene, or Mary?" is a consequence of that namelessness.
Yeah.
He can't make that determination, so he asks, although the question may be rhetorical.
Okay, so... And the wash, now there's no verb there,
Right.
so I have a really difficult time interpreting those three words.
I think the wash will refer to the ocean, personally. I mean, that's my understanding. It will be that. Let's see. So what's and the wash? I guess it's just going to push us into the next stanza, which I think is themed by oceanic imagery. But go ahead. Let's read the next one.
All right, so I'll read to the end.
Okay.
All night the water combed you with black insolence. You crept out simmering, accomplished. Water rattled that stinging coil. Your rehearsed hair, docile alas from many arms. Yes, Eve, wraith of my unloved seed. The cross, a phantom buckle, dropped below the dawn. Light drowned the lithic trillions of your spawn.
Okay.
Now, all night the water combed you with black insolence. I do think there is a reference to Eliot there.
Okay.
So, I have heard the mermaids singing each to each. I have seen them riding seaward on the waves, combing the white hair of the waves blown back. Because the word comb and waves are in that, I think it is a reference to proof rock. But is this just like Crane saying, well, I like this line, so I'm just going to rewrite it? Or is Crane saying, you've got to compare this to proof rock in order to get its meaning? I'm more inclined to think the latter. He's just quoting it because he feels like it.
Maybe if he's dealing with this reflection, the reflected cross, then the water combing you with black insolence would just be the reflection of the cross in the water.
All right.
And then you crept out simmering, accomplished. I mean, I guess simmering and accomplished could be, again, the reflection in the water, that simmering effect. Accomplished meaning perhaps the black water failed to erase or diminish her. When I was reading this, I kept thinking of the Medusa. Water rattled with that stinging coil, the biting snake, your rehearsed hair. So I thought of Medusa, oddly enough.
Well, I just thought that connected Eve with the serpent. So this just connects.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
So maybe she... Well, I mean, I think there's a Gnostic tradition whereby Eve actually had sexual relations with the serpent.
Oh, wow.
Maybe I don't know, but so yeah, I think just in terms of physical, visual phenomena, we're seeing the reflection, perhaps, of the night sky or aspects of the night sky in the in the water.
But another thing we have to ask here, like, is she a mermaid? Is she in the water?
No. Again, I think it's just that reflection.
But
in the water.
Clearly says she crept out. You crept out simmering.
Well, that's at the end of the night. So she emerges even after the night fades. I don't get the mermaid image personally. I don't. But what I like, docile, alas, from many arms. She's had many lovers, which pushes back into the temptress, that whore image. Part of my use.
But one. I mean, yeah, I agree with you there. But one thing I have difficulty with is, a seductress or a temptress is typically not docile. So if she is docile, is she like a woman that is passed around and is not able to resist?
Maybe she's simply a woman who's been tamed. And then I love this. Do you think that he ever consummated his relationship sexually with Eve?
You mean in this poem?
Yes.
See, I do lean towards the interpretation that. See, I can't decide if she's a mermaid, because in the proof rock reference, these are mermaids.
Right. But before we get to that, do you think that he consummated his sexual desire?
No, I don't think so.
And I agree. Let me tell you why, real fast. If you can just go to the beginning of the poem, where I'll get a little more. I wanted you no wraith but utterly. Now go down to the bottom, and it says, Wraith of my unloved seed.
Right.
Which we don't need to text it. We don't need to go into the imagery, but I think that implies that it was ever a fantasy, maybe a masturbatory fantasy, hence unloved seed, but it was never actually consummated.
Yeah,
that's my interpretation.
Well, Kramer thinks that refers to masturbation, but I don't.
That's my thinking.
I don't think so.
Wraith of my unloved seed? Sure. I mean,
No,
there's this sanction in the church against masturbation. You're expending your seed, nothing comes of it, hence unloved seed. So I'm thinking it is masturbation, personally.
Okay, and then the cross. So the cross, a phantom buckled, dropped below the dawn. So just the cross went down below the hieroglyph.
Correct.
Okay, light drowned the lithic trillions of your spawn.
Yes.
I have trouble with that because if spawn refers to the eggs of Eve, she doesn't have a trillion. She just has.
It's referring to the stars.
Well,
you have the sunlight drowning out the lithic trillion.
Yeah, like Kramer thinks that too, but I have trouble with it. So, but why would the stars of your spawn? Why would he be saying that? And why would they be stony? Why would the stars be stony? Lithic. Lithic means stony.
Right. Lithic trillions of your spawn. I'm still inclined to say, could lithic be? I know it refers to stone, but could it imply ancient? The ancient trillions of your spawn. I think trillions references stars, certainly. But yeah, the lithic term, the use of the word lithic. I'm not really clear on how to interpret that.
All right then. So we'll just chalk that up to unknown.
So sure.
All right. Well, we're not in agreement as to whether or not. So do you see Eve as a physical person, or is she just a constellation of stars or something?
I don't think she's a physical person. I don't think she's a constellation of stars per se.
Well, then how could he be? How could he be seduced?
Well, it's not so much that. I think it's this nebulous ideal he has of womanhood. Hence, are you a mother? Are you a whore? Are you a temptress? That kind of thing. That's my inclination, that it's some sort of ideal, not a specific. Now that ideal may manifest as a certain person or in a certain form, but I think, like I said, we're dealing with this very mysterious, very threatening feminine ideal. Yeah.
All right, well, let's leave it there.
Okay.